Welcome everyone. Hi, my name is Dennis Migono. I am a Communications Associate at CLASP and the host of this webinar. We would like to welcome you and thank you for joining this session on labor relations and occupational safety. Before we begin, I would like to go over a few house rules for your convenience and information. One, this session is being recorded, and that recording will be available on YouTube after the workshop. All attendees are currently muted. However, we will be having group discussions later on. And during those group discussions, please feel free to unmute and also share your video if possible and participate in the discussion. If you have any questions for the facilitator, you can drop that in the chat. You can also send that to me directly. Alternatively, you can politely excuse yourself and interrupt to pose your question or make a comment. We encourage you to share information freely and to respect the diversity of opinions that will be expressed throughout this session. And finally, a certificate of participation will be issued to all the participants after a small activity or exercise that we will explain later on. Our facilitator for today is John Amboya. He is an environmental and social safeguards specialist. But before we hear from him, I would like to invite my colleague, Monica Wambui. Monica is a senior associate at CLASP, and she leads the implementation of the Energy Access Relief Fund Helpdesk. Monica, please welcome and to give your opening remarks.
Thanks, Dennis, and hello, everyone. As Dennis mentioned, my name is Monica Wambui. I'm working with Dennis at CLASP in our Nairobi office. And again, welcome to this 8th of 9 workshop series and on labor relations and occupational safety. And so before we jump right into the presentation from the workshop with our facilitator, maybe a bit of a background on the Helpdesk. So the Helpdesk was created with funding from the World Bank in order to support applicants to the Energy Access Relief Fund, which is being managed by CIMA. And the purpose of this Helpdesk is to build the capacity of applicants around various ESMS topics, as well as e-waste. And how this Helpdesk is engaging with companies, this is being done in 3 ways. This workshop series is one of the ways that we are building the capacity of organizations. We also have a portal, a resource portal where we are housing multiple resources, including the recordings and presentations from these workshops. And the last form of engagement is a one-on-one consultation where we invite companies to reach out to us through our email address, the EARF helpdesk@CLASP.NGO. And on this email address, we will get to engage deeper on what your needs are as an organization with regards to the various topics around ESMS, as well as e-waste, and build out a plan for continuity on how you can just increase your capacity on these topics. And so post this workshop, even as ongoing this workshop, in case you have any specific questions, we welcome you to reach out to us again at the helpdesk@CLASP.NGO. So bringing us back to the workshop today, I think we were in to learn about human rights, business rights, SDGs, good labor practices. And as we're doing that, John also has a couple of exercises for us to just lean into and engage with the topic even further. I'm particularly excited about this workshop in order to learn more. This topic continues to be particularly important for multiple sectors, especially at this point in time. And so I hope that it will be useful in not only just your businesses, but also just in your general outlook for life and even how we continue to move around our spaces. So I welcome you again and welcome John Amboya to kick us off.
Okay, thank you very much, Monica and Dennis, for that insightful introduction into our topic today. Our topic today is about human rights and good labor practices and relations, and so many other things in between. So I'd also like to welcome everybody that has joined this session. As Monica and Dennis have said, I think it's going to be us discussing about these issues, getting a background, exploring some examples, some case studies of about human rights, good labor practices, and how they apply to our businesses. So just to connect this to the requirements of the Energy Access Relief Fund. So within the conditions that were given to the different borrowers, the companies were required to provide terms and conditions of employment, have information about employees and workers' rights that defines hours of work, wages, overtime, compensation. There's something that was required on employee code of conduct, recruitment, progression, and whistleblower policy. And there was an aspect about having an employee grievance mechanism, anti-harassment policy, sexual harassment policy, gender-based violence. And then there was a requirement that a company has to fulfill on having a policy also on non-discrimination and equal. I think there is a mistake, equal opportunity. So, and then also the aspects about prohibiting child labor and forced labor, and then also the opportunity to employees to, as it pertains to their right to organize, and also the way that you are exiting the employees from your company or business. So there's another aspect that I forgot to include here about having a job protection measure for female employees. That was also a requirement from CIMA. So as a definition on human rights, so human rights are inherent to all human beings, whatever our nationality, wherever we are from, our sex or gender, color, religion, language, or any other status. So human rights are for everybody, and there is nothing that separates one human being from the other. So if we talk about human rights, then it means that they're universal. So, and I was just thinking about this definition, and I was thinking about in banking, there's something called a banker's check, a check that is written by a bank to another institution. So, and that banker's check, it's usually, it's like a rule. It cannot be countermanded. You cannot refuse to pay a banker's check. So the same case applies to human rights. You cannot deny another human being their rights because maybe they're Black, maybe they're white, or maybe they don't speak your language, and so on. So that is the universal definition of human rights by the High Commissioner for Human Rights. So some of the human rights that are included in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UDHR. The first one is about the right to equality. There's another one on freedom from discrimination. And there's another one for freedom from slavery. There's another one that is relevant to good labor practices, the right to freedom of expression. There's a right to work, fair wage, and to join a trade union. That is Article 23. There's the right to adequate standard of living. So is your company paying your workers a living wage, or you're just paying the minimum wage or below the minimum wage? And also the right to education. So there are so many other rights that are included in that Universal Declaration that if you have time, you can go and familiarize yourself with them. So the current status of human rights, mostly when you talk about human rights in the world, it's usually about two things. Mostly it's about land, and the other thing is usually about labor. So, for example, since 2000, the year 2000, over 40 million hectares of land have been snapped up from maybe indigenous communities, so denying them their right to own property. And then when you talk about slave trade, so when you talk about slave trade, there's by 2018, around 40.3 million people were enslaved globally. So they were being forced to work. And then the other one is about gender gap. So in 2016, the gap widened. And the other aspect is about child labor. So, and in 2018, over 150 million children worldwide were engaged in child labor in 2018. So, and to get like a glimpse of, Dennis, go back, about issues about slavery, forced labor, child labor. There's a report that is published every 2 years, but the last time it was published was in 2018. I think they've not published a new one. I think because of the COVID pandemic that is still going on. So the report is called the Global Slavery Index. If you search online, you'll find it. So from their last publication, they indicated that over 40.3 million people were in modern slavery in 2016. And most of these people are female, so 71% of them are female. And around 15.4 million of these people were also in forced marriages. And the prevalence of modern slavery, I think we are going to see that in the next slide as we look at two examples. The other slide, just go ahead. So like in this example, I've taken, for example, Nigeria and Kenya. So if you look at those findings from the study they did, you can see that there's the ranking of Nigeria is 32 out of 167 countries in the world. Kenya is ranked 41 out of 167. So, but if you look at the government response to modern slavery, you find that the government of Nigeria is doing more compared to Kenya. So Nigeria is rated B, Kenya is rated CCC. So if you look at the vulnerability of the people in these countries to modern slavery, you find that the people in Nigeria are more vulnerable to slavery than the people in Kenya. So that is for 74 compared to 70%. Okay, let's go back, Dennis. So this slide just indicates that there are people who are in modern slavery that are included in the labor market involuntarily. They are being forced to produce goods and services. And some of these goods and services are exported to the biggest 20 economies in the world. So this slide just shows like in 2018, like it was estimated like 354 billion value of goods and services produced through forced labor were going to be sold to the 20 biggest economies in the world. And you can see a breakdown there. These people, like a value of 12.9 billion for people working in fishing, and the garment industries, you find 127.7 billion people. So if you look at these figures, it's huge value. And I just tried to compare it to the nominal GDP of South Africa that is projected for this year. So the value that of goods and services produced through modern slavery is almost equal to the GDP of South Africa. So let's go. Next. So those are some of the issues about human rights globally. So, and in this slide, I just wanted to open like a discussion for us to share what are some of the human rights issues in your company or maybe in your country, if you would like to share. So Dennis, and we can just take like two opinions and then we proceed.
All right, so all the participants have the capability to unmute and share. So if anyone would like to have a go, or if you'd like me to call your names out, that would also be fine. But anyone willing to share on that question, what human rights issues are especially relevant to your company or to your country? We have a comment by Taiwo, right to a conducive working environment. So we have Wiza in the comments saying right to fair wages and development. Okay, thank you.
So from the two comments that have been posted are mostly about decent work environment as the most common human rights issue.
Maybe just before you proceed, John, I see there's also a question from Ope asking for you to clarify what you mean by relevant.
So like the human rights issues in their country or maybe in their company, you know, maybe in their country there's no issue about land grabbing, there's no issue about working environment for employees, you know. So what human rights issues are relevant in their country? So from a report that was published in 2015 by the Economic Intelligence Unit, so like 91% of the company leaders that were interviewed say that the most important human rights issue that they encounter is about conditions of work and employment. The other 83% of them said there's an issue about private life. 81% say there is an issue about education and access to technology. And 78% say that the issue about rights related to the environment. So the history of getting human rights at the center of business operations has been around for quite some time. And if you look at that cascade, that staircase, you can see that the issue has been around for around like 70 years or something. 70 years, starting 1948 after the Second World War, where the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was done. And then for a long time, the issue about human rights took a back seat, or mostly it was driven by governments. And then in 1993, now the launch of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights was done. And then in 1999, the United Nations Global Compact was started. And with that, they were able to launch the Human Rights Council together with the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. So in 2008, there's the launch of the Protect, Respect, and Remedy Framework for Business and Human Rights. And in 2011, there was a human rights chapter that was included in the Organization of Economic Development Countries, OECD. And then in 2011, we have the guiding principles on business and human rights launched by the UN Global Compact. In 2012, IFC performance standards also were launched and had requirements on human rights. And in 2015 now, those are now a universal declaration or universal conversation on human rights as they were included in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So in 2015, the Global Reporting Initiative, United Nations Global Compact, and the World Business Council for Sustainable Development collaborated to create something called the SDG Compass to mostly guide businesses to embed human rights issues in their operations. Next. So the United Nations Guiding Principles on business and human rights provided like a roadmap to how businesses can embed issues about human rights in their operations. So here we see there are like 31 principles that were created for states and companies to clarify their duties and responsibilities to protect and respect human rights. So at the highest level, the responsibility is with the state. The state has the duty to protect human rights. And then now at the company level, the company has the responsibility to respect human rights. And at the lowest level, we have in terms of making sure that they're upheld, you have to have an access to provide an access to remedy. So both the states and the business has to provide a remedy for business and human rights. Yeah. So according to those principles on business and human rights, as I've shared earlier, the business enterprises should respect human rights. And this means that they should avoid infringing on human rights of others and should address adverse human rights impacts that come from their operations. So and if we find time, you go read about the United Nations Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights. There's more definition on the specific things that a business should do in order to uphold human rights. So a survey was done by the same EIU, Economic Intelligence Unit, in 2015. And 83% of the business executives that were interviewed, they agreed with the guiding principles on business and human rights. And they say that human rights are an issue for businesses and not just governments. As I said earlier, mostly the agenda on human rights was driven by governments before 1991. And then 71% say that their company has a responsibility to respect human rights. And that responsibility goes beyond simple obedience to local laws. And then 63% say that the businesses' role in respecting human rights have to become more prevalent at the organizations over the last 5 years. So they've had discussions about business rights, business and human rights in their operations, in their organizations in the last 5 years. In 2015, with the Sustainable Development Goals by I think 193 states in the world, business and human rights were codified. And in the 15 goals that were in the 17 goals that were promulgated at that time, those goals have like 169 targets. And among those 169 targets, you have 156 of them that are directly linked to human rights and also labor standards. So like more than 92% of the SDG targets for the different goals are touching on human rights and labor standards. So, and you can see for an example there for goal number 8, that is on decent work and economic growth. target 8.7 says that you should take immediate and effective measures to eradicate forced labor and modern slavery, end modern slavery and human trafficking to secure prohibition and elimination of vast forms of child labor. So that is a target 8.7. So, and other documents that contain that target, you can find it in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. So, and then there's the last column where it is described, no one shall be held in slavery or servitude. Slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all their forms. So if you look at 169, 156 of the 169 targets, you get a narrative like this one that mostly touches on human rights and labor standards. And on the activity that will require you to do after the workshop today, you'll have to go and find out some sub-targets among the 169 that touch on good labor practices. This is just a recap of what we've covered so far. So human rights are complex and they encompass different topics. So, and these topics are from working conditions and land rights. And the businesses have responsibility to respect and protect human rights. And different initiatives, international initiatives have embedded issues about human rights into their standards. So we have the IFC performance standards. We have the United Nations Guiding Principles. We have the Sustainable Development Goals that have codified human rights and labor standards into the whatever text that they have developed. So how can a business meet their responsibility to respect human rights? So a business can do this in 3 steps. So the first step is about having a policy commitment to meet your responsibility on human rights. After that, you put in place a due diligence process where you identify, you prevent and mitigate and account for how your business is addressing the different impacts on human rights. And then the last step is about the processes that you put in place to ensure that when somebody is seeking remedy from maybe an impact on human rights, they're able to seek that remedy and get whatever outcome that they want. So there's an example here for how a company called BHB designed the human rights policy statement. So the policy statement here is the company, as BHB, we are committed to respecting and contributing to the realization of human rights, prioritizing those based on risk to people, including vulnerable and marginalized groups and business relationships and related to risk of the company. So what is the due diligence process? They have minimum supplier requirements for their suppliers and contractors. They also, from time to time, they do human rights impact assessment. And also, they also engage in ongoing stakeholder engagement. So if somebody has an issue about human rights, they suspect that their rights have been violated and so on, then they have a program that they've implemented called Speaking Up with Confidence. And then they have a 24-hour business conduct hotline where somebody can report any violation. So you'll be required to develop a human rights policy for your business based on that guideline, the previous slide and this one. And then so that you just get a feel on how you can do this at your business level. So why do you think a business should address human rights? Why should they? Is it really important for them to address human rights? So Dennis, this also it's open for discussion. Yeah.
Like to acknowledge comments from Chiara, and Ope also clarified that because I don't know the gender, I'll say they're having technical difficulties to connect. But there were comments that were left by Iliojo and Chiara. So thank you for those comments. And on this question, I don't know if anyone would like to share. If not, then I will invite you once again by calling out names. So feel free, anyone would like to contribute to the question. Why do businesses address human rights, or why should they address human rights?
Volunteer myself.
All right, go ahead, Joseph.
Since some of these human rights are things that have been accepted globally, so sometimes they may have legal implications, which may lead to financial implications. And also some of these rights help to give a safe working environment, meaning people will be able to work even better, and that can lead to a business success for the organization.
Okay. Thank you, Joseph. Anyone else make a contribution?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you. Sorry, I joined a bit late, but okay, let me come through. I think it's quite important for businesses to address the human rights, or to make sure that their policies are addressing human rights, because they interface with a lot of people during the day-to-day running of their businesses. And these people include, direct customers and stakeholders. And if they were not to observe human rights, then I think their impact on the communities where they work would be quite adverse. I can give an example, like, if a business is into, say, mining or agriculture, if they don't take into consideration human rights, they may end up discharging chemicals into water bodies that are used by communities, or they may have, forced labor or child labor for them to produce, their products at a lower cost. And this will, and this can lead to a lot of sanctions for the businesses, and also lack of acceptability for their products in those communities. So it's quite important for them to observe human rights. Thank you.
Thank you for that contribution. I'd also like to open the floor to a lady for gender equality purposes. Any lady who would like to contribute on that topic?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, Shalpa here. I think this is what I've picked up from Namibia, is that human rights, when it comes to organization, it must be best practice to avoid unnecessary labor issues, to avoid unnecessary business operation. At times it's much better if an employee or an organization have such a policy or such an act as part of the onboarding process, just to avoid any of those hassle and bustle during the employment duration of that individual.
Thank you so much for that.
I wanted to say that addressing human rights will also help to build the reputation of the company or organization. It will also help you have access to some funds. There are some donors who might not be able to work with you since you are not able to address some of the human rights. And sometimes you may also face unnecessary consequences and costs. For example, if you are not providing personal protective equipment to your workers and something happens to them, then you have to take the cost of covering for that damage, which in the first place you could have avoided if you already provided the personal protective equipment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ezri. As we close this session, I'd also like to acknowledge the comment of Steve Area, who says addressing human rights can help the employees have a conducive environment for better performance, which in return will benefit the business. So thank you all for your comments.
Very good comments about the business case for addressing human rights. So you can move to the next slide. We just give a few examples. So I think your contributions on that question that has been asked previously has touched on these areas. So mostly you get that businesses choose to address human rights because of ethical convictions. As you said when we were beginning, I was saying that addressing human rights is like you cannot take away human rights from anybody. You know, it's like a banker's check. You know, so from that conviction, I say that we are all human. We have to treat each other with respect. We have to treat each other well. So with that ethical conviction, now you take action as a business from that. And then the other reason for taking action, I think you've also touched on it, is about regulatory pressure, because there are responsibilities, there are laws that have been put in place for you to comply with in order to uphold the issue about human rights. So if you don't do it, then it becomes problematic. So let's go to the next slide. So for example, in the example on ethical conviction, there's this construction company in Cambodia. So most of their work, they do mostly construction. So in terms of child labor, this is the part of their policy. So every child deserves to have a childhood to be able to grow, develop through play and education in a safe way. So construction sites are not a place for children and will never be. So there is now a conviction that they have, a commitment that they have as a company, and it comes from that ethical conviction that children belong elsewhere, not on construction sites. So next. So in terms of regulatory pressure, you'll see that some examples I've given there. In 2015, the United Kingdom government made an act, a Modern Slavery Act, in order to just guide issues about slavery. And then in 2010, California state in the US also introduced that California Transparency in Supply Chains Act. And recently, just last year in the US, when the issues about Xinjiang came up, the US government introduced that Forced Labor Prevention Act. So to just make sure that whatever products or services that are being done or sold to America, there's no modern slavery that is done, there's no forced labor, there is no children labor that goes in as input. So, and then also in terms of the element about international standards, I think we've covered most of that. And then you can also see at the country level, for example, in Kenya, we have some acts like the right to good health, you have the Health Act, the right to water, we have the Water Act, the right to education, we have the Basic Education Act, the right to the prevention of discrimination, we have acts that cover people that are disabled. We have the Right to Information Act to make sure that everybody can access information that they want. Next. So the other aspect about the business case for protecting human rights, there's an example of Safaricom there. They used this as a risk management tool. So in that aspect, they collaborated with UNICEF to do an assessment of their operations. So they are trying to check or find out if there are any child labor that is involved in the business operations, and that included their network. So they used it as a form of risk management. And I think one of the contributors say that if you don't do it, then somebody can come and close your business, and it will be very expensive for you to rectify or cure whatever that has already been done. So the other aspect is about enhanced performance. So upholding human rights also increases the employee productivity. And I think we've been talking about having a good working environment. So if you have a good working environment, your employees feel comfortable, and then they're able to do whatever that is required from them in a good way, and they contribute to the company's bottom line. So then the last one is about stakeholder expectations. And I think this is the aspect that is growing nowadays in the world. So you get a given group of stakeholders that require businesses to pay attention to human rights. Nowadays, you find that there are so many demonstrations, there are so many picketing that is being done in the world now. For example, in the UK now, there's a group that is called Stop Oil. So they are going everywhere to organizations that are seen as encouraging fossil fuels, and whatever activities they are doing, they're just trying to pressurize the businesses to take action on the issue about climate change. So stakeholder expectations can drive you to take action you take action on human rights. I think the most recent galvanization about human rights was about the unfortunate death of George Floyd. And you know what happened to him? He was choked to death. So, and from his death, there are so many discussions about the human rights, what the police can do, what the police cannot do. So we had a global awakening on the issue about humans. So that is the end on the introductory part on human rights. Now the next session that we're going to have is just to see how they apply to good labor practices. So under good labor practices, we are going to look at what is the purpose, what is the concept of good labor practices. We look at the example of Kenya. What is the landscape like? So what are the key labor issues in the maybe solar off-grid in the industry, maybe renewable energy industry, and then also we go specifically on labor issues in the off-grid solar industry. So that donut is just about the whole business ecosystem. You can see at the center now we have the enterprise where the production is done. And then in the outer space, we have the operating environment where we have the society, we have the environment, and we have the economy. And then the exterior perimeter, we have the different stakeholders in the business. So we have governments, we have shareholders, we have communities, we have suppliers, we have customers, and we have employees. So you can see that employees are very important there. And that's why we want to discuss more about good labor practices. So the purpose and concept of good labor practices is mostly about the employees benefiting from fundamental principles and rights. So for example, they have the freedom of association, to join a trade union. And once they join the trade union, they can bargain collectively for maybe pay rise or good working conditions. And then also the other purpose and concept of good labor practices is there's that signs of positive adjustment by workers. And when you have workers and employers working together through mutual cooperation, then you know that good labor practices are in play. And then we have that grievance redress mechanism where conflicts are addressed and in a timely manner. And then also you have that open dialogue that is guided by, we have agreements, there is information that is being shared, there is consultation between the business and the employees, or even if there are any other representatives who are outside the company. There's that aspect about economic development. Remember in the beginning, we talked about that right to live well, you know, whether you're paying your employees a minimum wage or you're paying them a living wage. So there's that aspect about economic development. Are your employees growing? And then lastly, there's that growth among employees. Are your employees being trained? Is there a program for continuous improvement in their skills and so on? So the features of good labor practices, as we indicated, the first one is just it's cooperative, and then it's facilitative. You have to, for example, if you're an employer and you have employees, you have to facilitate them to be able to do their job. That's why you have to provide remuneration for them in order to do whatever that you've agreed in the agreements. And then the other important one is the in accord, the oneness with fundamental principles and rights to work. We'll see that next. And then you can say that you have good labor practices when there's accessibility, and then there's easy to use. And then there's that aspect about transparency. And then also the measures that have been put in place are cost effective. So you don't have to put in place very expensive measures in order for you to have a good relationship with your employees or your employer, and so on. So when it comes to fundamental principles and rights to work, is where we go back to the International Labour Organization Declaration that was first adopted in 1998 and amended this year. So mostly the fundamental principles and rights at work is an expression of commitment by governments, employers, and workers' organizations to uphold basic human values. So values that are vital to our social and economic lives. It affirms the obligation and commitments that are inherent in the membership of the International Labour Organization. So the first one is about freedom of association and collective bargaining. The second one is about eliminating forced labor or compulsory labor. The third one is about abolition of child labor. And then non-discrimination with respect to employment and occupation. And then also the last one, which is also important, is providing a safe and healthy work environment. So when we talk about in accord, we are talking about the good labor practice having or covering all those fundamental principles. That's when we say it's in accord, okay, with the principles and rights at work. There's usually a conundrum about good labor practices, and we have something called the positive practices. So in this slide, I'm just trying to create a distinction between good labor practices and positive practices. So positive practices are usually in parallel with or even reinforcing the effect of a good practice, and but in themselves they are not good practices. So because they lack basic elements, and most particularly the accord element. And as we've said, the accord element is about what? The fundamental principles and rights at work. So if you're implementing anything at your business or enterprise that is not in accord with the fundamental principles and rights at work, but it's also contributing to the welfare of your workers, then that is a positive practice, but it's not a good practice. Okay, so mostly you find companies doing CSR, or they have codes of conduct and ethic. They have monitoring systems and social standards. But most of these things are not, or are lacking their code element. So when we talk about positive practices, we don't need to have an agreement between the employer and the employee. That's why we are talking about the adhesion. Adhesion is bringing together. There's no that agreement that is together, that brings both parties together. So an example of a positive practice maybe you are having gym facilities for the employees. And what other positive practice can you think about that is not a good practice? So the distinction is that you cannot pay workers maybe below the minimum wage, but think that if you're providing them maybe beverages at work, it's important. You cannot say that you're practicing good labor practices when you do that, because as we are learning, is the code aspect is very important. And there are basics that have to be covered first before you start implementing the positive practices.
So like providing someone lunch.
Yes.
And underpaying them. So basically that's not a good practice.
Yes, that is a positive practice, but it's not a good practice.
A positive practice, but not a good practice. Okay, now I get
yes.
the distinction.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Other contributions, what positive practices do you implement in your businesses that are not good practices? Or they reinforce the good practices?
Probably just to ask,
Yeah.
if I have these positive practices,
Yes.
and you're not being underpaid per se, because I remember when you're describing at some point,
Yes.
you mentioned something about living wage, minimum wage, and below minimum wage.
Yes.
So like if the minimum wage here in Kenya is, let's say 15,000 Kenya shillings,
Yeah.
and I'm paying you 20,000.
Yes.
But I'm offering you a gym facility that probably would cost you around 4,000. And I'm offering you lunch that probably is costing around the same 4,000. Like how would that be characterized?
So that is okay. We've said that the positive practices reinforce the good labor practices. So that is in addition to, you've met the minimum requirements. So you are just adding on to make sure that the welfare of your employees is okay.
Yeah, so the employee cannot complain that since you're almost using probably close to another 10,000, they can't tell you, give me the 10,000 rather than gym and lunch. I'd be okay with the 10,000 coming to my pocket.
No, they can. I can't say they can't complain, but it depends on the agreements that you have with the employee, right? And the amount of input that they are giving you, and so on. If they feel that they are giving you more output, but you are not paying well, they'll of course complain. But if you are able to meet the requirement in terms of remuneration, and you're providing those extras, then that is okay.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
So another question that I can ask is that can you fire an employee because they are flouting maybe positive practices? For example, if maybe in your business you have maybe like a mini bar and you have some alcohol there, if they go drink the alcohol and maybe misbehave, are you able to fire them?
Yes, I think if there are regulations around the drinking of alcohol, and it's probably in their contract that probably you should not operate a machine while drunk, or you should not be intoxicated during working hours. Yeah, then according to me, I think that can happen.
Okay, who else would like to contribute on that?
I'd like to go. I'll just try here. So I think there's the stipulated time, working hours, like you said, probably maybe 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 or 8 to whatever it is. Anything after the time, okay, you can call it sociable because the employer has provided it. But I think the employer has the right to fire if you're misbehaving as well during those working hours, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody else?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, sorry, mine is not about answering the one about the alcohol at work. I just wanted to inquire so I know where this practice falls in, if it's positive practice or just good labor relations. So, for example, you have a set of female employees in your organization, and what you do, like we have a crèche system in our organization, and for us women that just post maternity leave have after maternity leave and they resume, they don't close at the same hours that other people close. Say for they close like an hour before others, and then we have where they keep their kids when they work, crèche. There are nannies that take care of their children during working hours, just so that they don't have to, they are sure that their kids are safe and they don't have to be afraid of you lose their job post maternity leave. So I'm just trying to get clarification regarding the practice. Is this just a positive practice or is a good labor relation practice?
That is a positive practice.
Okay.
Yeah. But we'd say that positive practices are not bad. They are good because they enforce the good labor practices. You've provided the basics, yeah? Now these are add-ons, yeah.
Yeah, they are add-ons.
The issue is usually about you've not provided the basics, you know, like you are engaging children in labor, but because they want to play video games, you are providing them with video games just to excite them, you know.
Okay. Then
Yeah,
in a case where for like in a case where both male and female, well, sometimes depending on positions and rankings, but in a situation where male and female there's no gap in terms of payment, like gender gap. It's that a good labor relation or just a positive practice?
There is a good labor relation.
Okay, just wanted
to. That is a fundamental. The right to equality.
Great.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Chiara, who was responding and saying it depends on the company's policy handbook and about misbehavior. I think this was regarding previous discussions. And then Jackson also said only if it's stipulated in the employee code of conduct. So I think this was in reference to the discussions around you. If you can fire an employee if they maybe got intoxicated on the job, and what that would look like. So I think those comments are referring to that discussion.
So something that I like to say is that when you are creating that employee handbook or the human resource the manual, you have to make every effort to make sure that it complies with the laws of the land where your operations are. So for example, in that last question, we are talking about dismissing somebody. You have to make sure that if maybe they get drunk, they're not performing their work, then what does the law of the country say? So you have to make sure that it's aligned. You cannot just fire somebody for a reason that is not, that maybe if they sue you as a company, they'll be able to be reinstated or you'll be able to pay damages as a company. So you have to make sure that you are aligned with whatever labor laws that are available in your country. So now we can look. I just want to give a few examples about the landscape in Kenya, the labor relations landscape in Kenya. Let's proceed. So in Kenya, we have a lot of legal frameworks that are touching on good labor practices. You can see there the Constitution. All those articles that are included there are in the Constitution, and they touch on the fundamental principles and rights at work. Next. So in terms of now the legal frameworks, you can see that we have the Employment Act. So within the Employment Act, the different sections talk about the different aspects of the fundamental principles. You can see there, Section 5 is talking about non-discrimination. Section 6 is talking about prohibition of sexual harassment. And then you can look at Section 27, hours of work. Section 29, maternity leave. I think 30 is paternity leave. And then Section 35 is termination leave. And then something that I like to also point out is Section 10 it points out if you are employing people on contract, there are details that have to be included in that contract. So that's why I was saying that you have to align whatever that you are doing in the human resource manual or workbook with whatever the requirements are in law. So you can see there you have details that you have to include in every contract. So in terms of relations, labor relations, you see that there's the aspect about freedom of association. There's the aspect about trade unions. And then the part 8, you have the dispute resolution. So the law, as lawyers like to say, is very clear in terms of human rights and labor practices. So, and as we are discussing about the business case, you know, if you are not respecting the human rights and the good labor practices, then you see now you run afoul of these laws. So you have even a law that is establishing a board on labor. Then we have a wages council. We have a specific law that promotes a good working environment. That is the Occupational Safety and Health Act. And then there is that insurance for workers, the Work Injury and Benefits Act. And then there's the court now for seeking redress in terms on labor issues. So, and I think we did a compilation of some of these laws for, I think, most of the countries that were eligible for the EARF fund. So you can check on the portal. You see which laws apply on human rights and labor standards. So this is just the conventions that Kenya has ratified from the ILO. So, and from this convention is where now they've guided the development of those different laws that we've just gone through. So in Kenya, this is the map for labor issues. You can see there's a growth in terms of people joining trade unions from 2014 to 2018. And then you can see that there's a lot of violation in terms of observation of trade union rights. So Kenya ranks 4 out of 5, which is close to the worst in the world. So only 30% of the organizations, you can say the trade unions, have 30% women representation in decision making. And then 21%, only 21% of the workers have social security, so the National Hospital Insurance Fund and the National Social Security Fund. And then only 5% of the workers in Kenya are covered by collective bargaining agreements. So, and then there's a statistic there that I'd like to point out. We've been talking about living wage. You can see that 30% of the people that are working in Kenya, they are not able to live at par or above the poverty rate. So they're spending less than $1.9 a day. And then 26% of children aged between 5 to 17 years are engaged in child labor. So that is the map, the labor map in Kenya. And next, I think we'll look at in the off-grid solar industry globally, there's a huge shortage in terms of labor. And I think you can also confirm this or deny. So, and this in some way is inhibiting growth of the sector. There's the aspect about forced labor in China. And I think we've covered that Forced Labor Protection Act. And then the women's participation in the energy sector is way below their participation in the larger economy. So this is despite 48% of them making the global labor force. So women are not many. So we need to implement programs that promote more women to be involved in the renewable energy industry. So, and then there are issues about occupational safety and health in e-waste management. And I think this is an area that is attracting so much interest of late. How do we ensure that the people that are maybe managing e-waste, their welfare, their working conditions are okay? And maybe the chemicals that are enforced to them are not affecting their health. So those are the issues in the off-grid solar industry. I don't know if there are any others that you can add before you go to the core labor standards. Are there any other issues that I've not captured, or you can add on that, or you can clarify on those that I've listed?
Oluwatomistin, can you hear us? Are you on the line? Are you able to speak? If yes, please contribute.
Hi, Dennis.
Hi.
So I'm just thinking, I'm not sure, but I don't know if employee engagement is part of the labor issue that we have. So talking about not engaging the people and finding out their pain points, could that be a labor issue too?
John, are you able to address that?
Yeah, I think we can add that. I think she has experience of that.
Okay.
So the engagement levels are low.
Dennis, I think for me, I would be on why women's participation in the energy sector is that low when we have women in the rural areas being the ones who are responsible for issues to do with energy for cooking, especially for cooking in the rural areas. Why do we have so few women participating as workers in the solar off-grid industry? And how best can we work on that so that we have more women participating?
Yeah. Well, historically, there are groups that have been marginalized, and women are one of them. And by marginalization here, I mean marginalization from the point of access to solar appliances and equipment. And so to answer your question, the answer would be inclusion, and inclusion not just to one particular group, in this case women, but also to other historically marginalized groups, such as people living with disability, such as refugees, because there is research evidence that demonstrates the potential or the impact that access to solar appliances could have on them. So I think inclusion would be a good first step. As to why that is happening, I'm not able to comprehensively give you all the reasons, but yes, I think inclusion would be a good place to start. And thank you for that comment as well.
Hi, hello. If I can add just a little contribution about this topic and women in renewable energies. So of these 32%, the majority of the jobs is in admin. Why? because socially, so the social economic picture also in the west of the world is that women are not pushed or encouraged to pursue STEM disciplines, which is all the sciences, but basically so. One of the solution should be address this issue since the first years in school, since primary schools, and encourage women to to study these disciplines. This is one of the elements, of course, of a very complex topic.
Yeah. Thank you, Chiara. And you bring up an important point about inclusion. Monica, I see that you've unmuted. Would you like to say something on the topic?
Yeah, no, I was just going to agree with Chiara and just that. So even with the 32%, I think the other stratification that would happen even in that number is those in the formal sector and in the informal sector, and then linking it back up to education and what Chiara is saying, that when you're thinking about renewables, then it brings us back to the whole conversation around STEM topics and the uptake of such topics around young girls in school, and how to actually make the topics appealing or something that they would be interested in actually pursuing, so that will build the number. So it would have to go back to the very beginning of the discussion of the story to get people in, to get more young women interested in the topic. Yeah.
Thank you, Monica. And also for the purposes of this discussion, we've recently published a report called Appliances for All, and it highlights the topic that we are discussing right now, which is some of the marginalized groups who ordinarily would also require access to these appliances, don't have them. So in that report, we give 5 key recommendations to the sector and to stakeholders in general. And one of the recommendations is to ensure that energy access companies such as yourselves are including women in the process of designing these products, in the process of marketing these products, and in the process of selling these products. A woman is much more likely to purchase a product if that product was designed with them in mind. So I encourage you all to visit efficiency-access.org, and under our publications, you'll see a report called Appliances for All. So yeah, thank you all for your contributions. John, unless you'd like to add something, we can proceed to the next section. But before you do, I see there's a comment. Yes, so yes, these slides will be available. And for the benefit of maybe the people who are attending this for the first time, we record these sessions and we upload those recordings on our YouTube channel. We also upload links to the recording and to the presentation on the Energy Access Relief Fund Helpdesk portal. So yes, the slides will be available.
So thank you, Dennis. Thank you all for those contributions. And I think the discussion about there in terms of having few women, I think maybe that was the thinking behind the requirement by SEMA that you have to have a job protection plan for female employees. So, and as I've been thinking about it, I think in our work as environmental and social safeguard specialists, mostly when you are doing community engagement, when you are creating awareness, looking at the impacts of a project. So sometimes you find yourself talking about if there's a lot of income, men tend to, maybe I can say men in Kenya, if they are married, they tend to go for a second wife. And then if it's a lady, if they don't have that enough financial literacy training, or maybe they decide to leave their marriages. So I was just thinking that for this fund, that requirement for like having that job protection for women, and in this time of COVID, I think that there's that blind spot that we have. We say that since we are in a crisis now, we can let the women go, like fire them, so that we remain with men because we feel that they are strong, they can weather the storm. So I was just thinking, maybe that is the thinking about it. So to remove that bias, and if you look at other studies that have been done about the economic input of women, maybe in the society and so forth. So to safeguard and getting more resources flowing to the community and so on, it's better for us to engage more women in gainful employment and gainful economic activities and so on. So Dennis, I think we can proceed. So this one is, I think we've been talking about this core labor standards since we started. There are usually four standards. Just continue, and the first one we can talk about is child labor. So the picture on the right, we have a child who's carrying a lot of bricks, and the picture on the right, on the left, sorry, and on the right we have a young man who's taking care of cattle. So between the two photos, who's engaging in child labor? So there's usually another conundrum in terms of understanding the issue about child labor. So mostly it refers to abuse, and it's always good for us not to confuse it with children working. So if you look at those two photos, you can see the girl is carrying a lot of bricks. There's another, the boy is looking after cattle. So how can we judge that one is engaging in child labor and the other one is just working? And this mostly goes back to as maybe in Africa, the traditions or the culture that we have. So it's very easy for you to find young men helping in taking care of the cattle, and you should not treat that as child labor, But it will be child labor if I meet a young kid selling a solar home system in the streets that is going to benefit somebody financially, and they are not of the legal age. So child labor mostly is defined by the age, and this age varies around the world. So you have countries that you can start working at 15 years. You have countries that you can start working at 16. For example, in Kenya, you can start working at 18. So it depends. There's no universal minimum age for working, but you have to find out about your country. So maybe a country is 15 years, maybe another one is 18 years. Yeah. So, and there are countries in the world that their economies are not well developed and they don't have enough educational facilities. So, and in those countries that you get, children are allowed to work from an early age of 14 years. So that is child labor. Dennis, let's go. So in terms of discrimination, so an act and result of treating persons unequally by imposing unequal burdens and denying benefits instead of treating each person fairly on the basis of individual merit. So discrimination can include harassment and discrimination can increase harassment or a denying of opportunities. So you take a course that of comments or of actions that are unwelcome or are not in accord with the fundamental principles and rights at track. So mostly when we are defining human rights, we are saying that you cannot deny somebody because they are white or black, they are male or female, or they come from a poor background, and so discrimination mostly expounds on that. And in Kenya, we have, I think I've talked about this, we have articles in the Constitution that touch on discrimination, and also that Employment Act that is very keen on preventing discrimination. Next. So all the work that is done by somebody without their permission or as a penalty is categorized as forced labor. And I think we've talked about them, slavery, slave labor, or bonded labor. But also from a company perspective, if you give employees debts that are sustainable, can be used as a form of what? Forced labor. You're trying to tie them to your company. For example, when for migrant workers, you can say that you're engaging in forced labor, maybe when you're hiding their identity papers, or you're requiring them to pay some deposit in order to work for you, or compelling workers that are under threat that you'll fire them, and also asking them to work extra hours to which they've not previously agreed. And I think we've been talking about the issue about in accord. And in accord, we talked about the fundamental principles and rights at work. We talked about having agreements in place. So if you agree with somebody that they'll be working from 8 to 5 every day, anything beyond that that is not paid for, that can be categorized as forced labor. So, and I think there's an example that is in the world that is now is being discussed, and it's about football. You know, Qatar is hosting the World Cup, and there's been a lot of discussion in terms of the people that were involved in building those stadiums that football will be played about in a month or so. There are so many human rights abuses that were met on them. And some of the aspect is about the travel documents being confiscated, the working condition not being that good. So there's that ongoing discussion, and I think you can go, if you have time, you can go online, search and read about it. So, and so there are some countries that are even threatened to boycott because of those violations on human rights. So the last core labor standard is about the freedom of association and collective bargaining. So I tried to find out if there are any unions that are allied to the solar off-grid sector or the renewable energies. I couldn't come across anyone. But as the industry grows, I think the unions should be formed. So when the unions are formed, or if your employees want to join any existing union, you are required to cooperate with them. You allow them to join. If there are any deductions that you have to do from their check to submit to that union, you have to do that. And if the unions are calling for collective bargaining, we are assuming that the industry has grown and we have big unions. So you have to listen to whatever issues they are raising, be it money or working conditions, and negotiate with them. So that is all about freedom of association and collective bargaining. So I think we covered about human rights, but for good labor practices, the companies that have done well in this area, they've seen financial rewards through expanded markets. There's increased employee productivity. There's a reduced cost of compliance, and there's low staff turnover. So are there any challenges that you experience as a business in embedding good labor practices in your organization? Maybe you can get two comments from the participants and then we proceed.
Hi, Taiwo here. Just for me, common challenges would be then asking for more. Like, we know there are these general labor practices, but then the employees now demanding for more. And how do we balance that? But for now, it's a challenge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Ask it. Okay.
Yes, thank you. I agree with Taiwo. However, I also think that a challenge is also from the management part, because they are really trying to get as much as they can from the workers and not necessarily balancing that out. So again, it could also be from, I don't know if I should call it the selfishness of some management. I think that's also a challenge too.
Yeah, I think from our experience is that we often have employee that, yes, remuneration is one of the biggest challenge, I think, globally, but also how an organization can get the same return when it comes to commitment, working hours. Many times it forces an organization to go into an angle of even having no cell phone allowed, because with the new social medias, many times staff are just forever on their phones. And that is one of the biggest challenges right now, I think, in my country.
Okay, John.
So thank you for those contributions. So as I said from the beginning, when we started with the case for embedding sustainability in your company, I say that this is a journey that you go step by step. You can't do everything in one day. So you continue improving your practices, continue doing whatever that you're offering. And that also should be guided by whatever input or output that the company is getting. Yeah. So in terms the last topic that I'll just cover briefly is about occupational safety and health. So mostly it's good for a business to have an occupational safety and health policy that provides guidance on how the working conditions are supposed to be, the different activities the company is doing, the risk assessment that has been done, and how the company is planning to protect the health and safety of its employees. So you have to provide a safe and healthy working environment to employees. You have to provide training to your employees about occupational safety and health. And you have to have like a register of where, if there are any accidents or diseases or incidents that occur in your operations, you have to report. And then also, for example, monitoring maybe noise and air quality in your workplace. So the aspect on reporting on occupational accidents and diseases mostly is for companies that work in mini grids. So for every site that you do, you're supposed to have that register so that you report to the authorities, maybe the people who are in charge of labor issues. And in case of any accident, then the workers have to be compensated in one way or the other. That is why it's important. And if you are not able to arrest it at your company level, it becomes problematic when they go to the court of laws and they sue you. So in that register, mostly you just cover the specific, if there's an accident, what happened, what actions were done? Is there any treatment? Did somebody die? You know, it's always important for you to share this information. But above all, the most important thing about occupational safety and health is the most important thing is to create a working environment that is safe and healthy for all. So let's go to the next one. So I came across that photo of one of the players in the off-grid solar industry, Azuri, and I thought it would be good for us to make a conclusion on our discussions today, from the human rights to good labor practices. And this is open to all of us. What ideas are you getting? You try to connect whatever that is happening in that photo to whatever that we've been discussing this afternoon or this morning.
Yep. Yes. Well, what I can tell is that having any kind of electric device actioned by solar energy instead of fuels or different carbon carbon footprint is definitely something which has a relevant positive impact on the planet.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Same, I would say, like for fridge or any kind of cooling, small fridge or small van, which now is powered by solar panels, which is becoming, I think, more and more common, for instance, in Benin, because we've just been there, and more people are using, this new type of energies to power their businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Yeah, what I've noticed is something to do with occupational safety. As you can see, one of the guy there is having a helmet, which is part of safety, having a wetsuit, which is nice for the person. And also there's a clear message to the side of the banner, I think, where there's pay as you go solar power for your home. There's some kids there which are busy studying, which means there's a promotion for children education.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Great observations. Anyone else?
Yes, Wes here.
Yes, go ahead.
So from the banner, I'm seeing pay as you go solar power for your home. This is right to equality, ensuring that so on pay as you go, you get the product and you'll be paying in installments. That ensures that even the poor, those that cannot have the huge amounts of money at once, can also access the product. So I'm seeing Azuri is promoting right to equality to access lighting system or energy system. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else before we close? All right, I'll invite John to give an assessment of all the comments that were made and share his feedback.
So thank you for your observations, but I withdraw the but. It's good. So to add on what you've said, I think there's the aspect of occupational safety and health there with the helmet. There's if you look at the age of the people in the picture, you can see that we have quite some people with advanced age. We have young children there. So there's that diversity. We have men, we have a woman. We have solar energy off-grid. I think it's trying to that sustainable energy for all, that objective. And then they are launching a TV. So there is that aspect about right to information. And then the children, I think you've commented on that. The children are not working because they are reading, they are busy reading. So I think that those are the things that observation that I can glean from that photo. So Dennis, I think that will be it from me.
All right, thank you, John. And thank you for everyone who made time for this session. Today's session has been very interactive and we appreciate your engagement. I'll just open the floor up to anyone who'd like to make a comment on the presentation that has been made, or if you'd like to, or if you have a question for John before we wrap up. Okay, seems like we don't have a question. All right, and then I'll just find out, Monica, do you have closing remarks before we wrap up? Anything you'd like to say as your final comments?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dennis, and thanks everyone. This was a really engaging discussion. For me, I think on my end, I can say it was really interesting to learn about positive practices and good practices, and there's actually a difference, and they need to constantly ensure that we are aligned with the existing or in accord with the existing regulations. And then also just the difference between child labor and children working. I found that really interesting. I think just looking back at my upbringing, there's a lot of children working, which I think would have otherwise been misconstrued as child labor. So I think that distinction also is really important. But I think just to wrap it up, in appreciation of all the challenges that also just good labor practices come with, that there are also benefits and opportunities to be discovered in taking them up seriously. And so I'm just hoping that with this workshop that then it has sort of started the conversation, and it will be an opportunity for you to start the conversation in your organization and see how it can grow. And so just moving across human rights, good labor practices, and also with a look at occupational health and safety. But nothing else from me, Dennis, and just to say thank you again to everyone. Thank you for your time, and wishing you a lovely rest of your day. Yeah.
Thank you, Monica. Great summary. Once again, I'd like to appreciate everyone on the line for making time for today's session. As a reminder, we'll be having our last workshop on the 17th of November. So we encourage you to sign up for that if you haven't yet. We'd also like to mention that we've been recording all the sessions. And so if you've missed any of them, you can check either on the CLASP YouTube channel or on the Energy Access Relief Fund Helpdesk, the portal itself. And if you're unable to find that, you can also reach out to any of us and we'll be able to give you some directions. But as Monica said, we wish you a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.